Hey there, and welcome. Have you ever looked at a bill and seen that GST line and just kind of wondered what it's all about? It can feel like this huge, complicated maze. But don't you worry. In this explainer, we're going to give you the keys to unlock it, one piece at a time. Yeah, whether you're a student just trying to wrap your head around this for an exam, or you're a business owner who has to deal with it every single day, it's easy to feel a little lost. It's got a lot of moving parts, and honestly, it can be genuinely confusing. But that's exactly why we're here. We're going to tackle this together. I want you to think of this as a journey, and we're going to pass through 5 main gates. By the time we're done, you're going to have a really clear, solid foundation. Ready to go? Let's head to the first gate. Okay, our journey begins right here, at the most fundamental gate of all. The question is as simple as it gets. What does GST actually apply to? What in the world is being taxed? So at its core, GST splits the entire world of commerce into just 2 big buckets, goods and services. Goods are pretty much what you'd expect, any physical thing you can move. The phone you might be holding, a ceiling fan, even crops growing in a field. Services, well, that's basically everything else. It's not a thing, it's an activity, like getting legal advice, renting an apartment, or getting your car repaired. Now, things get a little more abstract with something called an actionable claim. All this really means is the right to claim something you don't physically have yet, like potential winnings from a lottery ticket. The key thing to remember is that under GST, these claims, think lottery tickets, betting, gambling, they're all treated as if they were physical goods. All right, we are through the first gate, so we know what can be taxed, but that's not enough. We also need to know the specific action that actually triggers the tax, and that action is called the supply. So what is this supply thing? Well, the definition is incredibly broad, and that's on purpose. It's designed to cover pretty much any way that value changes hands in business. A sale, a transfer, a barter, a lease, renting something, you name it. Basically, if it's part of a business and there's some kind of consideration, usually money, it's going to be called a supply. And this is where we see some really interesting details, especially with property. Renting a place? Easy. That's a supply of a service. But the real head-scratcher is in real estate sales. If you buy an apartment while it's still being built, you're actually paying for the service of construction. But if you buy a house that's already complete, that transaction is completely outside of GST. It's a really critical difference. We've made it to Gate 3, so we know what's being taxed and we know the event that triggers it. Now we have to ask a crucial question. Where did this supply happen? The location is everything because it decides exactly which tax is going to be applied. The logic here is all about geography. It's pretty simple, really. If a transaction starts and ends inside the same state, let's say a shop in Bangalore sells something to a customer in Mysuru, that's an intrastate supply. But if that same shop sends a package to a customer in Chennai, boom, it becomes an interstate supply. The only question you have to ask is, did this transaction cross a state or UT border? All right, we are cruising right along. Let's tackle the next 2 gates together, because they both answer the most practical question of all. Who actually needs to register for GST and pay? You can think of it like a 3-step checklist. First, you ask, are you exempt? An agriculturalist, for instance, is totally off the hook. Second step, are you required to register no matter what your income is? The big one here is if you sell goods to another state. That means you have to register, period. And if neither of those apply to you, then it all comes down to step 3, your total annual turnover. So what's the magic number? Well, for most businesses providing services, that threshold is typically 20 lakh rupees a year. If you're a business that deals exclusively in goods, that number is often higher, at 40 lakh rupees. Now, these limits can vary a bit depending on the state, but they're the main benchmarks you need to keep in mind. And just to give you a quick idea of what's completely outside the GST net, we're talking about basic food items, like fresh milk. Core services in charity, education, and healthcare are also exempt. Even services by top government officials, and yes, even the sale of the national flag are not subject to GST. We've done it. We've made it through the what, the when, the where, and the who. Now we're at our final checkpoint, the how. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually calculating and paying the tax. So to figure out the exact value that you apply GST on, there's this really handy and memorable mnemonic. You start with the price, then you make some adjustments. You include things like packing costs, you deduct any proper discounts, you include interest or late fees, You onboard any obligations of the supplier the customer pays for, and finally, you throw in other taxes that aren't GST. It's a quick way to make sure you're getting the value right. Okay, so once you know the value, who actually sends that money to the government? Well, the default rule is the normal charge mechanism, or NCM. The supplier collects the tax and pays it. Simple. But sometimes the responsibility gets flipped to the customer. This is called the reverse charge mechanism, or RCM. You often see this in specific industries, like legal services, to make sure the tax gets collected properly. And the final piece of this whole puzzle is timing. The time of supply determines the exact moment a business is on the hook to pay GST. As you can see, under the normal rules, it's pretty simple. It's whichever comes first, the date you send the invoice or the date you get paid. This is so important for accounting because it tells you which tax period that transaction falls into. And just like that, you've passed through all the gates. Seriously, by understanding what is taxed, when it becomes a supply, where it happened, and who is responsible, you now have the fundamental logic of the entire GST system down. You know, Albert Einstein famously said, "The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax." And look, while he was talking about a different tax, the feeling is universal, right? Hopefully, by breaking GST down gate by gate, we've made it a whole lot less hard to understand. So, I'm going to leave you with this one question. Now that you have the basic framework, how many GST transactions do you think you're part of every single day? From your morning coffee to your internet bill, you're going to start seeing this system in action everywhere. Thanks for joining me, and I hope we made that maze a little easier to navigate.